This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Global coronavirus cases pass the 1 million mark as nations struggle to cope. The face mask dilemma. Many countries now considering asking even those who are not sick to wear them. And a nightmare for those without a regular income as lockdowns take effect in many parts of Africa. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtogana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. Moroccans protest against a $65 million real estate scam. And in sports, South African hockey teams continue to train as they wait for the Olympic Games. Right, we start with the latest on the COVID-19 pandemic. Worldwide, the number of confirmed cases has now passed the 1 million mark in over 200 countries and regions. The United States has more confirmed cases than any other country, with over 245,000 cases. More than half of all cases have been reported in Europe. Italy and Spain are the worst affected, each with over 112,000 infections. And the Chinese mainland has reported 31 new cases as of Thursday. 29 of them are imported. Well, in Africa, the number of COVID-19 cases is rising daily. 50 nations have so far reported infections, and there are now more than over 7,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus across the continent. Now, according to the latest data from the Africa Centers for Disease Control on COVID-19 in Africa, 561 people have recovered and 284 people have died from the virus. The deaths include Somalia's former Prime Minister Nur Hassan Hussein. Meanwhile, Comoros, Lesotho, Sao Tome and Principe and South Sudan are the only 4 countries yet to report confirmed cases. Well, New York State, which is the epicenter of the outbreak in the United States, has reported more than 90,000 cases and over 2,400 deaths. The New York City mayor is urging residents to cover their faces when outside, despite a shortage of masks. Our correspondent Sarah Walton has the details.
And that advice also coming from the mayor of Los Angeles to residents there. Now, in New York, health officials say that they are seeing some evidence that the virus is being spread here by people before they are showing any symptoms. And also the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is the national organisation that's been tasked with getting on top of the outbreak in the United States. They say there is research suggesting there was a cluster of cases in Singapore that was spread by people who didn't show any symptoms. So this idea of wearing a mask is about trying to stop people spreading the virus without knowing it, rather than protecting themselves. But as you say, this is kind of a change in advice. People, certainly in New York, were asked not to buy masks because there is a shortage of them here, even a shortage for healthcare workers. And so what the mayor is actually asking people to do is to make a mask themselves, or perhaps use a scarf over their face. Now, Donald Trump, the president, was asked about this in his briefing from the White House on Thursday, and he said that if people want to wear a mask, then they should do so. But Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is on the White House task force against COVID-19, he's one of the country's most respected health officials, he says that there are talks going on behind the scenes at the White House about making this a national advice for everyone in the United States. Certainly now, if you go out onto the streets of New York, you're seeing far more people wearing masks or covering their face than you saw about a week or so ago.
2 cruise ships with passengers stricken by the novel coronavirus have been allowed to dock in the U.S. state of Florida. This ends a 12-day search at sea for a pair. CGTN's Nitsa Soledad Perez has more.
The nightmare is finally over for more than 1,200 passengers stranded at sea on 2 ships of Holland America, the Sandam and the Rotterdam, both owned by parent company Carnival Corporation. At least 9 people on board these ships had tested positive to the coronavirus. Also, more than 100 exhibited flu-like symptoms, and 4 people died on board the Sandam. For that reason, many ports along its route refused them to allow them to dock and get any medical assistance for the sick passengers. According to Carnival, 14 guests required medical care and were evacuated to local hospitals. 50 are being treated on board. The rest of the passengers will be sent home on flights or in cars with masks and instructions to self-isolate. Now, the crew of both ships will remain on board unless they need critical care. After reports of the deaths and the sick surfaced, Holland America transferred healthy passengers from the Sandam to sister ship Rotterdam before crossing the Panama Canal. The Sandam left Argentina on March 7th on a 14th-day itinerary. The ship was turned away from its final destination, Chile, where it was set to start a 20-day cruise ending here in Florida. For days, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had refused to allow these ships to come to the state. This Thursday, the governor changed his mind, allowing them to come to Florida, disembark, and giving some sense of peace to these passengers, crew members, and desperate relatives that had been waiting for days for some kind of resolution. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Miami.
Europe now has more than 500,000 confirmed cases, accounting for around half of the number worldwide. The death toll is approaching 40,000. Our reporters have more from Italy and Spain, 2 of the hardest hit countries.
April the 13th is significant for Italians because that means spending Easter indoors, distant from families. Of course, Easter is important here in Italy. It is a Catholic country. Many would be attending services at church or perhaps having family gatherings. Conte told Italians that he is asking them to make this further sacrifice to overcome the virus. And since March the 11th, that sacrifice has included stopping all unnecessary travel, all non-essential businesses, and remaining indoors. As the lockdown has continued, we've seen more and more restrictive measures implemented, including harsher fines for those not following the rules.
The rate of new infections does continue to drop. When the state of emergency began, the number of new cases was running at about 20% per day. That's now just over 8%. The Health Minister, Salvador Illa, was saying, quote, "When we talk about death, there is no good data, but the curve has stabilized and we are entering the deceleration phase." This, according to the authorities, points to the fact that the lockdown is working. On the flip side, the restrictions have also resulted in the worst month in the labour market in history. Here in Spain, there was an unprecedented rise in the total jobless figures for March, with almost 900,000 jobs lost. Spain now has 3.5 million unemployed. That's nearly 14% of the entire population. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Now, as COVID-19 cases rise across the continent, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the governor of Kinshasa has announced a 2-week lockdown on one municipality in the city. The area is reported to have the highest number of COVID-19 cases. Other areas around Kinshasa will not be affected. The lockdown will start on the 6th of April and end on the 20th. Our reporter Crystal Chomaringa is following developments. He now joins us live for more on the story from Kinshasa. Chris, tell us firstly just a little more about these plans for a lockdown and how people are planning to cope with it.
Yeah, so Lindy, this lockdown is going to take place in a municipality known as Gombe. This is a large area that covers the central business district and stretches all the way to an upscale residential area where the president, diplomats and other rich Congolese people live. It's an area that has most of the government offices, shops, supermarkets, and so there are lots of people who keep coming in and out of this area. Last week we were told by health experts, Congolese health experts, that most of the confirmed cases of COVID-19 were found in this area. And so this is one way that they hope will stop the active transmission of COVID-19. But there has been a concern by some people that many people who have been based in this area will move to other areas, the outskirts of Kinshasa, and that disease may spread there. So what's happening is that people have been asked by the government to maintain the social distance measures and to ensure that they keep washing their hands while they're in those other areas of Kinshasa. Many people have taken this as a very good news because they were fearing a total lockdown. Most of the people in Kinshasa live from hand to mouth, and if they were told to stay home for just 3 or 4 days, it would be a disaster for them. And so people hope that they will be able to make money in the other parts of Kinshasa. Lindy?
And we know, of course, that Kinshasa backed down just last week on plans for a full lockdown. And this is after various suppliers and traders decided to hike the prices of their goods. How will authorities ensure the same doesn't happen this time round?
Well, the authorities have had a number of meetings with traders, and they've also talked to people who bring produce from other provinces to Kinshasa. One of the problems that caused the prices to hike is that some of the people who come from other parts of Kinshasa, other provinces that are not affected by COVID-19 were not allowed to come in. And so the traders who operate in Kinshasa decided to hoard some of their produce, essential products like food, and then the prices hiked. So what's happening now, the government has allowed some people to come in with produce, but of course they'll have to be checked so that there's a steady flow of food, especially in Kinshasa, and that the prices should not be increased for the ordinary people. There have been fears that if the prices increase, there'll be chaos. We had reports of people planning to loot and cause a lot of social unrest in Kinshasa because of that lockdown that was eventually cancelled following the rise in prices. Lindy?
Chris Ochamringa live with us there from Kinshasa. Thank you so much. Now, most African countries have in fact shut their borders, closed schools and banned public gatherings to combat the coronavirus. Let's take a closer look at the numbers now by region on the continent. In North Africa, Algeria still has the highest number of coronavirus cases. Egypt follows closely, while Sudan has the lowest tally. In West Africa, 16 countries have reported cases. Burkina Faso and Ghana currently have the most number of cases. Burkina topping that list with 288 confirmed coronavirus cases. In Central Africa, Cameroon has the highest number of cases there with 306. The DRC continues to deal with the Ebola epidemic, but it has the second highest number of recorded cases in the region. In East Africa, the region continues to report the lowest number of confirmed cases. Kenya is the only country in the region to have crossed the 100 mark. Governments are, however, taking stringent measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. Rwanda is currently under lockdown until April 19th. In the south of the continent, South Africa continues to record the highest number of cases with over 1,400 confirmed COVID-19 cases. The government is enforcing a 21-day lockdown as well as carrying out a mass screening campaign in an effort to stop the spread of the disease. While still in South Africa, the country is taking tough measures to stop the spread of COVID-19. Among those is the 21-day lockdown and the banning of all public gatherings. Authorities also removed 300 refugees from a Cape Town church. The refugees had refused to be moved to a temporary shelter. The shelter, though, is part of the government's national COVID lockdown plan. After negotiations failed, riot police removed the refugees. They've all been relocated since.
Still a state of disaster. And so we're very happy that it's really going smooth and people are now going to a place where they will be assessed and also a place where they can be checked. Because God forbid that if any one of them would have got the virus, you see. So we're very happy the way it goes. Refugees in South Africa has got rights like any South African except the right to vote and the right to have an RDP house. And therefore, as refugees, they must obey the rules of the law.
Well, let's take a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. Police are tracking bandits that killed 22 people in Nigeria's Sokoto city. And after 2 years in office, we look at Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's reform journey.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
We start in Nigeria now, where police in Sokoto have confirmed the death of 22 villagers. This after a suspected bandit attack in Gangara community. Police reports say a large number of armed bandits on motorbikes stormed through Gangala village on Wednesday afternoon. Military patrol teams were sent to the scene. Let's get you more details now from our reporter Phil Ihaza. He joins us live from Abuja. Phil, to begin with, when police say bandits, what exactly do they mean, and what could be made of, what can we imagine could be the motive of such an attack?
Well, thank you. In Nigeria, especially in the northern part of the country, we have cases of banditry where most of them are syndicates with the criminal intent of stealing food supplies, rustling cattle, and kidnapping, and of course carrying out raids on nearby villages. And most of those villages are in the deep remote areas of the country where they're not, they don't have a lot of government presence there. It's not very much policed, as the case may be. So you see these people go out there with the intent of stealing food supplies, carting away resources, and moving to unknown places, because of course those areas also have vast land. So that's actually what we've seen, and it is actually reason in recent years where the government has been tackling several fronts of insecurity challenges like insurgency in the northeast, militancy in the Niger Delta, that's in the southern part of the country, kidnapping, and a whole lot of other fronts or forms of insecurity. So we've seen these cases rise in recent years.
And of course, some parts of Nigeria are already seeing curfews or lockdowns. This in response, of course, to the coronavirus outbreak. Is this in any way affecting this kind of crime in terms of reducing banditry or even terror attacks in Nigeria?
Well, unfortunately, we haven't seen, a major decrease in these banditry or in these attacks by bandits. We had there have been several cases. For example, the one in Kaduna just about 3 days ago, where the same bandits or suspected bandits attacked a village there. But many security analysts have said that the reason is actually because the security apparatus of the country is stretched at the moment. Not all states have actually locked down, but many of the security operatives are busy tackling several issues. There's the Boko Haram issue. There's other forms of insecurity like kidnapping and all of that. And then we have them, patrolling, states that are on lockdown and several other states that have placed.
Fortunately, it seems we have lost Phil Ihaza there, but thank you very much to him reporting live to us from Abuja, Nigeria. Now, it has been 2 years since Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came to power. The Nobel Peace Prize winner introduced a number of political and economic reforms. Many still expect Abiy to redouble efforts in fighting insecurity and ethnic-based violence. CGTN's Girum Chala has more.
Almost 2 years ago, following the resignation of former Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn, the then 41 years old Abiy Ahmed came to power. With him also was introduced the much anticipated all-rounded socio-economic and political reforms. Now, 2 years have passed and they were not easy for Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Normalizing the then fragile security situation of the country and ethnic-based violence was at the top of his job in the past 2 years. Many say he was more or less successful in those areas. Abiy's economic reform plans were also unprecedented, but gave the Ethiopian economy necessary push forward. The financial sector reinforcement and the encouragement of FDI to the more particularly the industry sector has been instrumental. Personally, and due to the self-brokered peace deal with Eritrea, Abiy Ahmed has earned himself the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize. Many applauded his efforts in Sudan and South Sudan in helping these countries reach out at an amicable, peaceful solution for their decades-old problems. Still, analysts agree Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has a lot more homework on his plate against time, achieving an unshakable peace nationwide, motivating the economy for it to generate more jobs and stage a fair and democratic general elections when the time comes soon. Above and beyond, though, many expect him to defeat the coronavirus pandemic by working hand in hand with the global community. Grumjala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
The World Food Programme is warning of worsening food challenges in the African Sahel region as humanitarian aid reduces due to the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. According to the UN body, Mali and Burkina Faso are the most affected nations in that region.
As the world combats the spread of the coronavirus, many countries have closed their borders while many flights are grounded. In the Sahel region, the spread of COVID-19 is riding on an already bad situation. There is a worsening state of militancy and food challenges. The World Food Programme warns that humanitarian supplies are reducing.
Some of the bigger companies, and indeed the main suppliers globally, are in countries that are currently under strict confinement and a very reduced level of production. A lot of the nutritious products are produced in India or France, for example, where factories have had to reduce or close or reduce significantly their production. We have big concerns on this, and our supply chain colleagues, together with UNICEF, are looking at locally available enriched foods to complement this.
For the lean season, the upcoming months, June to September, the analysis concluded that we are going from 10.8 million people declared food insecure last year, 2019, to 19.1 million people in 2020. This is an increase of 77% from last year, and it's unprecedented.
WFP experts also say Mali and Burkina Faso could be the most affected, since the number of internally displaced persons has been increasing in the recent past.
Burkina Faso is now, if not the first, at least one of the most or the fastest growing displaced population crisis in the world. It's a country that virtually had no IDPs, internally displaced populations, 18 months ago, and now the latest official figures are in excess of 800,000 people displaced.
The spread of the coronavirus is also exerting pressure on humanitarian aid agencies as they seek to achieve primary measures to protect both locals and aid workers.
We need to limit the number of people that gather, so we need to fragment the number of sites of distribution. The maximum numbers vary from one country to the other, but in general, not more than 50 people can be gathered. And even when those people can be gathered, we are implementing standard operating procedures to minimize the transmission of the disease. So there's a temperature check for all people coming into the distribution sites. And we have to respect 1 meter between every individual coming to get the food assistance.
Years of climate change-related conditions have affected food production in the Sahel. This has lately led to conflicts between herding and farming communities over grazing land. Militant groups affiliated to ISIL and Al-Qaeda networks have exploited these tensions to entrench themselves in the region. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Some people in Somalia are rejoicing as khat traders despair. That's because the coronavirus pandemic has halted the supply of the herb to the Horn of Africa nation. The Somali government has banned all international flights, including flights importing khat from neighboring Kenya. CGTN's Noel Mokugu reports.
Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Muna Nur Farah had begun to strongly dislike her husband. He would come back home at 3 in the morning with empty pockets, his money squandered on the narcotic leaf khat. But the situation has changed a little over a week ago as the coronavirus began to spread throughout East Africa. To curb the disease, the Somali government banned all international flights, including those that import khat from neighboring Kenya. The ban has deprived men like Muna's husband the addictive herb.
My husband was ferocious. He would come home at 3 a.m. Now that the khat is gone, my husband comes home early. Coronavirus is deadly. It may kill us, but at last khat was banned because of it.
Kenya exports about 50,000 kilograms of khat to Somalia each day. Somali men often gather in groups to chew the leaf, a mild stimulant, and chat into the early hours of the morning.
Khat took all my money. I hid a lot. I would delay going for prayers. I would hear the call from the mosque, but instead a group of men and I would head to tea kiosk to chew khat.
According to a 2019 article from the Kenya Medical Research Institute, more than 10 million people globally use khat. Due to the khat ban by the Somali government, the association's leaders say they'll be looking at a total devastation. Khat is highly perishable. It is usually driven from airfield to the market at breakneck speed. Some khat sellers have started shipping the leaf in, but the prices have immensely shot up. Before the coronavirus pandemic, a kilo would go for $20. Now, the same kilo costs about $200 to $300 US. Noel Mokugu, CGTN.
The Congo River is the Earth's deepest river, carrying 1.25 million cubic feet of water. The river is, however, being threatened by environmental degradation in the Congo forest, and researchers are working on regional interventions to save it. CGTN's Daniel Arap-Moy has more.
Freshwater habitats account for some of the richest biodiversity in Congo-Brazzaville, and Congo River is a vital and vibrant ecosystem for many species. The Congo River is one of Africa's greatest rivers, flowing thousands of kilometers across several countries. But the biggest worry now is pollution in Brazzaville that is threatening the existence of this river. Many say unless the government takes further steps to protect this river, the future may be bleak.
The misuse of this river is really bad for the environment, and as fishermen who depend on this river for our daily survival, we continue to see fish dying because of the plastics thrown into the river. And if we are not careful, this river and the fish species in it may cease to exist unless we change our habits of polluting the environment.
Many rivers across Africa fail to meet required health standards and face multiple threats, putting an increasing pressure on the diverse wildlife that call rivers home. There are very few rivers in Africa that flow as fast as the Congo River as it approaches the sea. This river has the potential of producing electricity that can supply not only Congo-Brazzaville, but many other countries across the region. But away from that, the Congo River is a source of livelihood for hundreds of thousands of Congolese who depend on it on a daily.
This river is very important to me because everything I do depends on this river, including money for paying school fees for my children, buying food. So basically my entire life depends on the river.
A variety of fish species sold across markets in Brazzaville come from the Congo River. If put to good use, the Congo River can generate wealth for millions of Congolese. And that's how fundamental the Congo River is. Daniel Arap Moy, CGTN, Congo Brazzaville.
Let's take a short break. Your business news up next. Coming up, the startup in Lagos developing alternative coal from agro waste. And Moroccans protest a $65 million real estate scam.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In your business news, the World Bank says around 20% of South Africa's gross national output comes from the informal economy. And between 25 and 30% of South Africans who are presently working operate in that informal space. But the coronavirus pandemic has forced the government to announce a 21-day lockdown. So how are informal traders surviving? CGTN's Alexandria Majala takes a look.
68-year-old great-grandmother Lucy Malimele started selling fruits and vegetables at Soweto's Kliptown Market in 1983. Over the years, she has relied on the trade to feed her family, including 8 grandchildren. Her trading stand was buzzing with activity before the 21-day lockdown started in South Africa. Despite the lockdown, the vegetable trader has no choice but to violate the curfew for her business and family's survival.
There's no business, meaning the business is dead, unless I break the law like currently. I say I got some produce which is not allowed, but I went to get it. Being here is not even allowed.
Aside from the struggle to put food on the table, a large portion of the population struggles with maintaining hygiene and social distancing.
I need food and money to support the children. We also need proper housing. Our toilets are not okay. They are outside and we have to go there in groups. Even the taps we use all at the same time. I don't know how we're supposed to cope during this time.
Africa's most advanced economy has announced tax relief for small businesses to cushion financial losses suffered by firms due to the pandemic. These include a new tax subsidy of 500 Rand per month for each worker to employers for the next 4 months, and also permit businesses with revenue of $2.7 million or less to delay paying 20% of their employees' tax liabilities over the next 4 months. But no support has yet been offered to the informal sector, which Statistics South Africa estimates accounts for around 6 to 7% of the economy. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Morocco is grappling with what's being described as the country's biggest ever property scam. More than $65 million has allegedly disappeared, leaving over 1,000 home buyers out of pocket. The man accused of being at the forefront of the scheme has been charged and is in detention awaiting trial. Here's more from CGTN's Daniel Arap Moy.
Uriah Gwasi is just one of the victims of what has been described as Morocco's biggest ever property scam.
We want to know who scammed us. All our documents went through public administrations, the notary, the ministry. All our documents went through these places.
Adverts on state television promised these protesters their dream homes at 3 for the price of 2. But all that was just a fantasy. More than $65 million have allegedly disappeared, leaving the likes of Gwasi out of pocket.
The person responsible is certainly the promoter, because there is a swindle, and besides, the case is now at the court level, so we let the justice system do its work. Now, the scam is growing, and when we say that the scam is growing, the law must also grow.
In a country where corruption is endemic, the unprecedented scale of this alleged fraud is also generating political waves.
The state must be present to develop the rule of law in such a way that the rule of law is ahead of the swindle. It must call upon the professionals because they are closest to the real estate sector.
The man accused of being at the forefront of the scheme is Mohamed El Khadi. He is the head of a group of farms that believes to have cashed advances from at least 1,000 victims. The home buyers had invested in around 15 fictitious real estate projects in and around Casablanca over a decade. El Khadi is also accused of receiving advances for apartments that never made it beyond the paper they were drawn on.
The president of Bab Dana Group scammed us all in a professional way by using TV ads, real estate shows, as well as billboards that could be seen from Casablanca to Rabat.
Real estate is among the sectors most affected by corruption in Morocco. The sector is regulated by a 2002 law, which was amended in 2016. However, a decree needed to implement that overhaul is still pending. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN.
EU Ambassador to Tunisia, Patrice Bergamini, has announced that the European Union will allow the immediate disbursement of almost $272 million in budgetary support for Tunisia. This will be in the form of donations to help the North African state contain COVID-19 and mitigate against its socioeconomic impact. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more.
EU ambassador in Tunis said the decision was announced by European Commissioner for European Neighbourhood Policy and Enlargement negotiations at a telephone conversation with Tunisian Foreign Affairs Minister Noureddine El Rai.
The Tunisian diplomacy is stepping up efforts to get more financial and health support from its international partners to provide more equipment and medicines to face this crisis.
The EU also announced that funds earmarked for the health sector support program in Tunisia will be beefed up, as they will increase from 20 million euros for the 13 governorates to 60 million for the 24 regions in the country.
The EU is providing a package of loans, donations and support funds to tackle COVID-19. The economic repercussions will hit all sectors and activities. The EU stands with Tunisia. Now, it's necessary to set our national priorities.
The Finance Commission at the Tunisian Parliament stressed its readiness to interact with legislative requests from the government to overcome the current crisis.
The EU has made an important step, but in reality, all this money will not be enough to face the social and economic bomb that will hit Tunisia. We urge the government to accelerate the pace of support to the most vulnerable classes to avoid more social tension amid the coronavirus crisis.
The Tunisian African Business Council has called for the immediate formation of an economic and social council, including experts with experience in crisis management and privileged relations with international donors, in order to save the economic fabric in the context of the coronavirus pandemic. The Minister of Finance stressed that the situation is becoming increasingly difficult and complex. He added that the government is working to find ways to finance the state budget and mobilize new resources to manage the additional costs caused by the COVID-19 crisis. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
To Nigeria now. Working from home has become inevitable as government has imposed a lockdown in 3 states, including the federal capital, Abuja. The order comes as the number of confirmed cases of the coronavirus increases. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports on how Nigerians are coping with working from home.
Software developer Michael Okundu has his office situated inside a busy mall in Nigeria's capital city of Abuja. But for a while now, he's been working from the comfort of his home to ensure his safety and that of his family. But getting work done is proving increasingly difficult. From family distractions and the temptation to lay down and sleep to even bigger struggles of work infrastructure.
It's a challenging experience because anytime I'm doing, I have to use my credit to make some calls. I use my data at home, which is very high. The data charge is high. And actually, my clients don't come to me anymore. So I have some difficulties communicating with my colleagues and my clients.
The situation isn't any different for this civil servant and father of four, Ahmed Bello. His productivity is also being hobbled by epileptic power supply.
Yes, of course. It can never be like in the office because in the office we have access to the internet service. The office environment is there, and all the assistance and the contact between you and your either superior or subordinate. We surely lack that. And not only that, we also have surely missed the electricity and some other office equipment which we are supposed to use.
Since the lockdown, operations of major businesses and offices ground to a halt. Medical services and food manufacturers are among the few allowed to operate under strict supervision. But more people are worried that the nation may not be technologically ready for the shutdown.
No, we do not have such technology that can be used to monitor your working activity from home. And the only method that most likely we use is making calls and sending emails.
It's actually difficult in Nigeria because the system is very poor. Very, very poor in Nigeria, the communication system, the network strength, and the gadgets. We are really left behind in these countries.
So for many like Ahmed and Michael, who have no choice but to work from home, they would have to spend the next few weeks overcoming the challenges and discovering innovative ways of making their work more fluid. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Nigeria has an annual deforestation rate of 3.5%, which is approximately 400,000 hectares per year. Much of these felled trees are used for domestic purposes, including cooking. Sadly, thousands of rural dwellers die each year as a result of the health risks posed by the usage of wood or charcoal as fuel. But one environmental startup has come up with an alternative, converting underutilized agro waste into eco-friendly coal for cooking. Deji Badmos has more.
In many rural communities in northern Nigeria with little or no access to steady power supply, the most affordable method of cooking is with firewood or charcoal, despite its huge health implications. But these engineering students and founders of the social enterprise Coal have discovered another way that's safer for both humans and the environment. The solution they're offering is this charcoal cube processed from mainly crop waste like dried sticks of grains, maize cobs, rice husk, and sugarcane waste generated from farms in rural communities. They say with this, people no longer have to cut down trees for cooking purposes, and the death toll from the use of firewood can drastically come down.
80% of Nigeria's population depend on firewood or charcoal to cook. This is leading to deforestation, which is also leading to desertification. A lot of crop cycles now is been affected because of people can't predict rainfalls, and all this is climate change. So because of that, we felt we have to come up with a product or with a technology that will be able to bring a solution and bring an end to this issue.
Under normal circumstances, these crop residues would have been burnt. But to avoid the air pollution that it may cause, Coal gathers the waste at their collection hub and converts them into clean cooking fuel. It is processed into carbon, after which the charcoal dust is mixed with a binding agent and then transferred to a solar-powered charcoal briquette machine where they're compressed into cubes, sun-dried and packed into boxes, ready for distribution.
We came up with a reliable and sustainable substitute that will hopefully bring an end to firewood and charcoal use in northern Nigeria. Our goal was to create a substitute to charcoal that does not change the current cooking practices of the rural and even urban communities. We didn't want any form of, we didn't want it to be alien in any form. We wanted it to be similar to exactly the same way they use charcoal, but still create a product that will not be as harmful as charcoal, but still be able to make the impact we're hoping to make.
Suleiman and his colleagues are basically making use of the local resources they have to transform their communities, and they have identified about 10 states with potentials where youths can be empowered with this innovation.
Where unemployed youths are in Nigeria is in the rural farming communities, and these rural farming communities have abundant crop waste which can be utilized for charcoal briquette production. Looking at the solar penetration of northern Nigeria, it basically just clicked for us, and having an engineering background, we felt that this is the best way to create a technology that will be able to fit with the rural communities. By making it solar powered, they don't need to get electricity, they don't need to buy petrol, they just have to use it, charge the batteries, and it's all good.
For many rural dwellers, brick coal in a box is an essential commodity that has come to stay. Although these young men still rely on financial support from their university, friends and family, they still nurse the dream of becoming the foremost suppliers of clean cooking charcoal in not just Nigeria, but on the African continent. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Kano, Nigeria.
Well, let's take a quick break now. Here's what's still ahead on the program. In Senegal's capital, Dakar, artists are creating graffiti with messages to fight COVID-19.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, since the first cases of COVID-19 were recorded in Africa, artists have been trying to educate people on the disease using various methods. In Senegal, graffiti artists from Dakar have launched a hashtag Corona Graffiti Challenge on social media. The campaign requires one to paint a graffiti wall every day to sensitize the community about the pandemic. CGTN's Beryl Oro has more.
Doctor is a graffiti artist based in Dakar. He's painting a wall in front of one of the biggest markets in town, hoping to educate residents on COVID-19. Through this painting, Doctor indicates the gestures recommended by the World Health Organization that can help stop the spread of the virus. He also paints the toll-free numbers of the Ministry of Health in Senegal.
For 30 years now, graffiti has been in Senegal. Graffiti has always been committed to raising awareness in different subjects that are happening. So today, we are bringing out contribution to the fight. As artists, as citizens, we do it to educate people, to lead them to respect health guidelines. We use walls because we know the impact it has directly on populations.
Like many countries, Senegal has taken necessary measures to help curb the spread of COVID-19. The Ministry of Health has advised people to wash their hands and cover their mouths and noses when sneezing or coughing. However, many fail to apply these measures. The graffiti paintings attract several people who stop by to take selfies as they engage in discussions about the coronavirus pandemic.
Naturally, we all have to be mobilized. If we love our country, each of us must do the same. We must try to inform and sensitize each at their own level. No one should ignore the seriousness of this disease.
I am really proud to see this work in my neighborhood. It is really nice. I think it will help a lot in the national awareness because visual communication is much more accessible to people. It reaches all social groups. At a glance, you can understand the message.
The Senegalese government has announced it will set aside about $2.2 million to fight the pandemic. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And coming up in your sports news up next. South Africa's hockey teams shift their focus as they wait longer for the Olympic Games.
would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
In your sports news, former marathon world record holder Wilson Kipsang was among 20 people arrested by police at a club in Iten town while drinking past curfew hours. The officers, acting on a tip-off from members of the community, stormed the joint and nabbed the suspects. The two-time London Marathon champion has been serving a provisional suspension by the Athletics Integrity Unit for whereabouts failures and tampering with samples since January this year. Kipsang stormed into history books in 2013 when he won the BMW Berlin Marathon after setting a record of 2 hours, 3 minutes and 23 seconds. The record was 15 seconds faster than the one set by Patrick Macau in 2011. South Africa now. The men and women's hockey teams will have to wait another year before making a return to the Olympic Games. The last time both teams featured at the Global Sporting Showpiece was in 2012. And although the squads are disappointed with the delay, they know it is the right call. CGTNC's Du Plessis got the thoughts of the players and coach on the new Olympic dates.
The COVID-19 virus has hit global sport like a hammer blow, shattering the esteemed and jam-packed calendar like never before, wreaking havoc on the Olympic preparations of the Rainbow Nations men's and women's hockey teams in the process.
Give us another year to prepare, give us another year to make sure our selections are exactly what they need to be. And we're spending as much time, with the athletes as we possibly can, just in terms of remote access, lots of discussions, remote training, making sure their programs are adjusted so that they can do them at home. And making the most of the situation.
For women's captain Erin Hunter, the delay around the postponement has been an emotional roller coaster. But by staying focused on the task at hand, she has managed to remain in a positive headspace and is more eager than ever to get back onto the AstroTurf.
Postponement of the Olympics obviously has huge impacts both emotionally and financially on us athletes. I think emotionally, there's this huge build up to something so big, and now that target has been shifted. So it's just that mindset to kind of stay motivated and stay in it, for that bit longer.
Veteran goalkeeper Rassie Pieterse, who boasts 161 appearances for the national team, believes that the postponement allows athletes to realize how fortunate they are to be able to compete, and that it is something they shouldn't take for granted.
There's a much bigger picture and there's a much bigger fight at the moment, not just for the athletes, not just for the Olympic Games, but for humanity. So I absolutely support this decision of the IOC. As athletes, we can just be glad that the word postpone has been used and not cancelled. So now we can just move the goalposts. We need to make sure that we stay healthy, we stay fit, and we just make sure that we prepare as hard as we can for next year.
There's no doubt that it is a trying time for global sport, but with time things will gradually improve, allowing athletes like the men's and women's hockey teams to get back to training and back to preparing for an event that only comes around every 4 or 5 years in this